Hi, I'm Miles Worlidge, and this is my article on this analysis presentation on the effects of cannabis on working and episodic memory. So the main questions being explored in these two studies are the effect of marijuana on various cognitive processes. This is a largely unexplored area of cognitive psychology. So specifically, it's the effect of cannabis intake on episodic and working memory. It's been hypothesized that delta-9 THC intake impairs processes of working and episodic memory. And then it's also the second study explores whether chronic marijuana smoking significantly impairs working and episodic memory. And this is due to the fact that meta-analysis of previous studies suggested that chronic marijuana smoking does not significantly impair these processes. So the first study, there were 10 participants, 5 female and 5 male. Anywhere between 23 and 31 years old with a mean age of 26.7 years. Casual marijuana smokers made up these participants, meaning they smoked between once a week and once a month for the past year. So there was a number of exclusion criteria that would exclude participants from participating in the study. The participants were also paid and they were given bonuses for fast and accurate responses. They set this up with 1 training and 2 test days. Subjects became familiar with cognitive tasks and procedures during the training. During this time, they also smoked a cigarette containing no psychoactive substances in order to control for inhalation time. So test days, subjects smoked THC cigarettes or placebo cigarettes. During the cognitive testing, EEG was monitored. The task combined working and episodic memory. The task had 3 parts: a word presentation phase, a working memory phase, and a word recognition phase. During the word presentation phase, a sequential list of 20 words were displayed on a monitor, half in red, half in green. They were displayed for half a second with an ISI of 2 seconds, and the individuals were asked to remember the word and the associated color. During the working memory phase, dot stimulus was displayed in one of 6 positions for 50 slides. During the low load phase, subjects responded if the dot was in the same position as the first slide shown. And during the high load phase, subjects responded if the dot was in the same position as the previous 2 dot trials. Half of the slides matched and half were no match, and subjects had to respond whether these matched or not. Slides were displayed for 200 milliseconds with an average ISI of 4.5 seconds. During the word recognition phase, this is when episodic memory was tested through a series of 40 words with responses as to whether the word was old or new and whether it had previously been shown in red or green. This approximately took place 5 minutes after the word presentation phase. The words were displayed for half a second with an ISI of 1.5 seconds. The data analysis, false alarm and hit rates were used to calculate signal detection accuracy, or D prime, and response bias. Dependent variables were EEG data, signal detection accuracy, and response bias. Independent variables were smoking THC or not smoking THC, the recording interval, and the task condition or trial type. The interrelation between the dependent variables and the independent variables were measured via a repeated measures ANOVA. And the results found were that working memory responses were slower and less accurate following smoking cannabis. This can be seen in the table shown to the right. Asterisks denote data that was significant. They also observed reduced alpha band EEG reactivity with increasing task difficulty in the marijuana group as compared to the placebo group. Marijuana smokers tended to falsely identify new words as old in the episodic memory portion of the task. This is a response bias that was observed. also shown in the table via the asterisks. For the second study, they set this up with 24 participants, 11 female and 13 male. These participants were chronic marijuana users, smoking an average of 4 cigarettes a day, every day of the week, with a mean age of 25.8 years. There was no exclusion criteria, but the inclusion criteria was healthy participants based off of psychiatric and physical examinations. This study was set up with 1 training and 3 experimental sessions. Before the experimental sessions, subjects were given a urine drug screening breathalyzer and a light meal of the participant's choice prior to testing to control for confounding variables. A baseline measurement was taken, and then 5 measurements or 5 data recordings were taken within 200 minutes of the baseline recording for the cognitive testing. There was a group receiving no THC, low dose THC, and then a higher dose of THC, and the sessions separated were by at least 72 hours each experimental session. The task was very similar to the previous study. EEG was monitored during a 30-minute computerized cognitive assessment. There were the same 3 parts. For the word presentation part, the only difference was that there were 24 words with an average ISI of 2 seconds, and they responded with the number of syllables in the words. Working memory, it was identical to the previous study, but an average ISI of 4,000 milliseconds, so 4 seconds. The low load condition was whether the dot matched the previous shown slide, and the high load was whether the dot matched the slide shown 2 trials previous. For the word recognition phase, 48 words were shown in series and with an ISI of 2,000 milliseconds, and subjects had to respond whether they were old or new. The independent variables was the dose of THC and time of data collection across the study. And the dependent variables were cognitive performance and neurophysiological measures correlating with the EEG readings. And then the relation between these variables were analyzed via a repeated measures ANOVA. They found that performance accuracy was not significantly affected by marijuana smoking. This can be shown in the word recognition figure. There was not a significant difference in the accuracy of high individuals during the study. There was a response bias, though, as shown in the bottom section of this figure, showing that individuals smoking the 3.9% THC concentration tended to label new words as old. Marijuana also reduced P300 amplitude and EEG power in the alpha band of the spatial working memory test. So the significance of these studies was that marijuana significantly impairs cognitive processes associated with working memory and episodic memory in casual users, but did not significantly alter response accuracy associated with working in episodic memory in chronic users, even though there was the same response bias observed towards labeling new words as old. These are my references. Thank you for listening.